I am a legal cannabis processor and drug connoisseur. I am a legal cannabis processor and drug connoisseur. Worked in multiple states on the West Coast, about 5 years or so of extraction and processing experience. Also quite knowledgeable about neuroscience and pharmacology in general. Ask me anything.
Before we start, be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about new videos. Comment your answer below.
What's something surprising about weed from a neurological standpoint that most people don't know? Well, first off, the most fascinating part about cannabinoids, THC, and CBD etc., at least emo, is the lack of research that has not been allowed over the past century. The endocannabinoid system, or ECS, the system that is affected by cannabinoids, is extremely interesting and complex as well. If I had to pick one though, I'd say the fact that CBD has the opposite effect on the ECS as does THC, which potentially means that continued dosage of CBD may upregulate the system and cause sustained effects similar to THC. Again, we need more empirical research though. Is this a long way of saying that if you use CBD often your body get used to it and will need to continue to use CBD? Similar how do people who smoke weed regularly have a hard time eating without smoking? In very simple terms, it may mean that long-term use of CBD causes a sustained stoning-like effect that is prominent with THC, and would make THC more effective in smaller doses. Addiction is caused by the opposite effect, down-regulation, and is what you'd be referring to where you need more for the same effect. I hope that makes sense. Oh okay, gotcha. Does that mean the CBD isn't metabolizing fully or no? I'm just trying to wrap my head around why that would happen. What are some software tools you'd love to see in the industry that don't exist, or smoking accessories? Great question. There's potentially a lot of room for various software tools in general, tools that will automate basic machinery and allow higher production with less operators. Also tools that allow for easier analytical testing and analyzing that data. That's my opinion as a processor. However, for the consumer it would be awesome to see that analytical data, terpene and cannabinoid content, of specific products easily accessible, so they can better treat their specific condition. The above, since terpene content has a lot more to do with the different effects of various strains than does indica versus sativa does, for example. Software developer, entrepreneur since the age of 12 here. Would be interested in chatting about needs in the industry. What's your age now? Lol. 33. How is the business doing and what is the main difference between running it in different states? Gonna guess the taxes. Businesses are doing quite well, thanks for asking. Our team's personal goal has always been compliance and legality. So in the states we've operated in, we've been at the forefront of licensing and such. That's why we've done so well so far. As for differences between states, although the way we're taxed is quite varied, although always very high, I would personally say the largest differences have to do with the types of products people are interested in, oddly enough, meaning our business models must vary between state to state. What are the more uncommon uses for cannabis in the future? I'm very interested in the idea of utilizing cannabinoids for easily degradable and sustainable plastics. Could be a huge game changer. Also sustainable, and stronger, forms of structural materials like hempcrete. And the use of hemp as fodder for animals instead of corn and soy. I have been in terrible back pain for 5 months now, bad hernia, again. Because I am likely to get addicted, I try to take no conventional pain meds. My doctor recommended CBD oil/vape for me, also because it will help me relax and calm down. Is CBD addictive? Does it remove pain or dull it? Is CBD easy to dose? I'm sorry to hear about your back pain, my friend. I have scoliosis, so I can empathize in a manner. 1. CBD is definitely not addictive. CBD itself actually has almost none to very minimal psychological effect. 2. CBD's main benefit is its incredible anti-inflammatory properties, so although its analgesic, pain relief, effects aren't substantial, it works great over the long term due to its ability to reduce inflammation. Also just great as a preventive supplement, for as far as we can tell, a lot of common diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's etc., are caused by long-term underlying inflammation. 3. Smoking. Vaping CBD is the best route of administration, because large doses are usually necessary for strong benefits, and smoking is the best way to get high doses immediately. This is very interesting. It does seem that there might be a link between infections and Alzheimer's, even though there isn't much science about it yet. Thanks for taking the time to do this. From my understanding, THC/CBD is usually extracted with a solvent, butane/propane, alcohol, CO2. Are there any solvents which are being played with behind the scenes? I find it very fascinating. Great question. This is an area I'm quite interested in as well, especially since it's more difficult and expensive to get approved for alkanes like butane and propane. Although they are wonderful solvents, especially when it comes to terpene extraction. Ethyl acetate is an interesting one. More than anything though, I'd say I'm most interested in utilizing terpenes, perhaps mixtures of multiples similar to what we see with butane, propane, and heptane, as effective non-polar solvents, perhaps plant-based, or at very least a more environmentally friendly class of solvents. Great response. Follow up, why is it more difficult to get approved for alkanes like butane and propane? Is that specifically in the marijuana industry? I used to work for a chemical manufacturer, but we also weren't working with consumer products, so I'm guessing that has something to do with why I might have never seen anything like that fly across my desk. To operate machines with many liters of alkane solvent at various temperatures and pressures requires separate licenses in most states than solvents like ethanol and CO2. California, for example, has classified the previous two as non-volatile, which is a bit funny from a chemical perspective. But this means that the counties and fire marshals require much more expensive build-outs, like large HVAC systems, overtly large fume hoods, and expensive solvent detection and fire suppression systems in the facility. What are your thoughts about amphetamines, speed in particular? Probably all substances have some form of medicinal value, not to say I think recreation is wrong. Just medicinal aspects more culturally important. I think amphetamines have their place and everything in moderation. However, for some reason I prefer other forms of stimulants. Amphetamines tend to last too long for me and give me a headache. Which places in the world do you think cannabis will take off in terms of legalization in the future? Asia seems to be least likely on the world stage. Other than a few exceptions, however, I think the efficacy of cannabis is too strong to ignore, and we will see some form of regulation, legalization in most of the world over the next decade. The biggest thing that needs to start happening is legitimate empirical and peer-reviewed studies, which that can't happen too effectively unless it's federally legal and regulated. So perhaps excited things could happen in Canada over the next few years. Do you prefer solventless or solvent? Do you notice and agree with the increasing popularity of solventless? Also, as a Brit semi-involved in the industry, I'd be interested to know how you came up in the US industry, where your first legal gig was, how you've progressed, etc. Where do you see it going now? As for solvents, rosin is the most popular solventless extract, or perhaps bubble hash. I personally love bubble hash. But I don't object to the use of solvents. Many household items like coconut oil have much higher ppm, part per million, of alkanes than most cannabis extracts, because cannabis extracts are held to such a high standard here in the legal states where they must be tested for residual solvents. I think CO2 and alkane extracts can produce some of the highest quality extracts that exist, and I use both myself. I started in the northwestern states, WA and OR, and began consulting elsewhere, which led me to meet many great people and open up many opportunities for me. I think the cannabis industry will spread worldwide eventually. Asia or Russia will probably be last for recreational though, and this may take 10 to 20 years, but I think we'll look back on it as a revolutionary industry for plant medicines. How do you get into the business? I've recently graduated with a master's in a medical field and have an undergrad in neurobiology. In addition, I grow marijuana for fun in a state which I'm allowed to. Is there a proper way to step up? Edit. Hit me up if you're looking for more growers/purifiers. I'd love to get into it. I get this question a lot, and unfortunately I don't have the best answer for you. In my case, the reason I think I've been successful and made way into the industry is twofold. 1. Luck. I knew friends that were already processing. 2. Hard work without pay. At first, I was willing to spend time in the lab without pay to invest in my skills. However, luckily now that the industry is maturing, getting entry-level jobs is becoming easier and easier and is becoming much more similar to the open job market, e-applications and resumes around local shops, grows, processors. How did you get your business started? Was it difficult, and do you think there is above average risk involved? I think the risk at the beginning was much larger than it is currently, and definitely higher risk than your average business, especially now though, since we're seeing movement at a federal level like the Farm Bill, etc. I think the risk has diminished quite a bit. Obviously I didn't do this alone, but our team started in one state, with pretty much no outside investments. Built our first business and used the leverage of that business to begin consulting for other companies and investors in various states. You say drug connoisseur. First question, connoisseur of what drugs and how did you achieve connoisseur status? Second question, do you categorize cannabis as a drug just like alcohol? I say alcohol specifically because of course it's ridiculous to put cannabis and cocaine in the same category, but maybe not so ridiculous to put cannabis in the same category as alcohol. Haha, I'm a self-proclaimed connoisseur, simply because I've always been interested in them pharmacologically, and also believe in Shulgin's ideal of self-administration. I think the term drug is a bad term, although useful due to most everybody's misunderstanding of drugs. If we accept that term, I think sugar, caffeine, terpenes, prevalent in all fruits and vegetables, especially fresh, alcohol, cannabis, heroin, and cocaine are all examples of drugs. That's particularly though why it's a bad term cause as you alluded to, it's much too large of a generalization to assume all drugs should be treated the same. Where would you rank Texas against the 50 states in terms of becoming legal? 49th in front of Mississippi? Ha! 48th, with Mississippi being 49, and at number 50 ha ha ha.
You have been visited by Sad Cat. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to make Sad Cat happy again.